a bird. So, if we look at this, we can see that there's light on one side, shadow on another. The head is basically going to be analysed as two spheres, with the light hitting one, shadow, light, shadow, like so. This is an example photo, but you're welcome to find any photos. And in fact, what I really want to do is give you an exercise where you don't actually have to have a photo. It's more like something you could doodle. So when you're just sitting there, you happen to have a pen, or a biro, or a pencil, and you can just kind of make up your own little birds in different poses. And of course, it's always good to look at source material, look at birds in real life, or look at photos sometimes. But I also like the idea that there's things that we can doodle when we've got a little bit of free time on our hands. So we're going to just glance back just briefly to a lesson we've done before, which was the one where we drew a sphere. And then I'm going to draw your attention to this toy egg here. And what's happened is that you can see that the light, similar to this drawing, is coming from the top left, sort of in the front. It gets to a point where it goes around the corner and there's no light can reach there, so it gets darker. And then sometimes there's a bit of a reflected light, as you can see in this drawing. If it's pictures of birds in trees, chances of reflected light are a lot less because they're not sitting on a surface, but could happen still. So if we kind of try and simplify the bird, like this little toy or sculpture bird or whatever it is, then we can see a similar sort of thing happening. We've got light up here, we've got shadow down here. So where it curves around, it starts to go into a shadow area. There can be a reflected light if it's on above a light surface. But the main thing is that there's light on one side and it's consistent. There's two main sort of bulk volumes. One is a circle here, and another is a circle or a sort of an eggy shape here. So let's begin with simplifying the form. So I'm just going to use these little models as a reference, but I'm not going to be sort of a slave to those. What I'm going to do is just start out with just playing around. So I'm going to say, okay, well, if I want that to be the body of the bird, and lightly just kind of go around until I find a circle that I'm kind of happy with. Then another circle that joins into that circle, just a little, another circle, and I'm going to make it a little bit sort of a flatter, cuter, more like an ovally shaped circle, that one, like a nice wide head for this bird. Now, you want to look at the shadows, same as here, shadows around the bottom, the light's coming from the same direction. And just going to make a shadow area, so the highlights up here, shadows here and here. And I'm just going to start shading in the spheres to start off with. Yeah, I've just kept this one pretty vague deliberately just to show you, like illustrate the point. But what I'm trying to show you is, like, if you have two forms, like two spheres, actually the second one's a bit more egg shaped, so I've used that, kind of elongated that side out a little bit. It gets a little bit more like that. From there, you're not very far away to just like add, this is going to be like a beak, and I'm going to make a little angle going back so it looks like it cuts in. Add a little eye. I'm going to draw a big sort of teardrop shape swinging out the back there. I suppose it could come down a bit lower and then up the top, and then we can flatten that out, flatten the back out. We could make some little like curves here, join that head on. You can even sort of flatten that out there, join a little curve shape there. Then we're going to look at draw like a kind of like a big sort of flattened W shape here, like here and here. Put that into the shade, and then we're going to draw some little legs poking forward. There, we've got 3 toes going forward. Maybe sitting on a branch. 1 toe coming back, probably wrapping around the branch, clinging on. Then his tail's disappeared. It's going to disappear behind that wing, so to show the tail, I'm going to make it poke up a bit instead. The tail, I think this is like a sparrow or something. The tail's going to come up, just draw like a middle line just to give yourself a bit of guidance, and then it's going to curve fatter toward the end. Doesn't have to be as square as that. And then it's kind of cute. Yeah, and then you've got your basic shape. From there, you might want to start to work into some of the shadows and joining things on, like the shadow consistent like down the front of it, like that. Deepen the shadow underneath it. Yeah, and then the same kind of thing, the light's on the top left on the wing. And because the light's coming that way, it's going to be quite light on the tail as well. So maybe just some lines on the tail. So we can call that our first prototype sparrow. Gives you a kind of a sense of the form. The next thing I'm going to do is in this video is show you a little bit of how you can use that basic idea to start to work into getting some textures or something that looks a little bit like feathers going on. So first of all, just have a crack at that one and pause the video. So 2 circles, make them into spheres and see if you can make a little bird out of it. Then when you've done that, come back and we'll go on to the next bit. So pause the video. So with doing the texture, I suppose the main thing is just to think about you know, the main sort of shapes of the feathers. It's good to look at a reference, but if you're drawing a bird, it's good to remember that the feathers are going to have a certain sort of pattern, a bigger pattern than just a bunch of feathers like randomly put. So for example, you're going to have like these like rings, you know, like a little bib shape under the chin, and then you're going to put the top feathers first. Even if this doesn't look very convincing to start off with, it just gives you a guideline. And then the next, on the wings, you're going to have like again kind of a fan shape at the top, slightly longer feathers after that in sort of a banana fan shape, and then pretty long feathers. That's the whole rest of the wing. It gives you like a reasonable sort of pattern. Around the eyes, the feathers are very small, and then they flow around the eyes, giving you a sort of pattern like that. And then in these like concentric little curves, but very small feathers, very fluffy, soft little feathers down the belly, and it gives you like a guideline of how the shading is going to go. So when you start to shade it, even though we might initially shade it like a sphere or a bunch of spheres with shadow here and here, what we do, or what we can find is, I'm getting a bit of paper and just smoothing that off. What we can find is that as we go along, we start to use the pencil in more or less the same direction and following. See how, remember how I've got those like bands of feathers? Well, in there and under there I might create some shadows and slowly build up the shapes. When I come to shade it, I can use those to my advantage and try to emphasize the feathers going in that direction. And if I just keep on going, I'm trying to speed it up for the benefit of you guys, so you don't have to watch this too long and listen to me talking too long. But if you follow the feather pattern in your shading, little bit by little bit, you start to build up the impression of feathers. And I'm just building up kind of darks wherever I think it's going to be dark under the feathers, and nice strong lines where I'm pretty confident. Got the shape of the beak, or you know, maybe the outline of the bird. Pretty sure about that. It's good to have some strong landmarks as you go, so you don't get too lost in the drawing when it's complicated. And it doesn't really matter if you lose a lot of detail in the shadows, like in the deep shadows. It doesn't really matter if you lose a bit of detail in the highlights, because that's normally what happens. Where we want to have detail that we can see is in the middle tones. That's where you expect the eye to be able to focus pretty well and be able to see decent detail. In fact, it can save you a lot of work if you're happy to lose a bit of detail in the shadows and in the highlights. It creates a pretty decent optical illusion, so you can just use your pencil direction to sort of create a sense of texture and direction. So what I'm doing now is basically trying to define a few bits and also undefine a few bits. So trying to smooth some parts out in the shadows, trying to get rid of too many scratchy pencil marks. And I've got quite a lot of middle tone that's going on now. whenever I've gotten lost with the shading, I've sort of referred back to that drawing, that diagram of the ball. And the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to start to use an eraser. You might have an eraser. I've cut this one down so it's like pretty sharp. So what that's going to enable me to do is just to sort of pull out some highlights and start to maybe pick up again some bits that have gotten a bit too grey. Now I don't mean this as a way of defining the feathers exactly, but as a way of sort of marking out where they might be, and sort of intend to go back over and grey it back a bit. But what it's good for is just kind of picking out little bits, like I want to pick out this ruffle again with the sharp edge. It enables me to sort of get another sort of dimension of texture as well. You have to press pretty hard if you've really rubbed that graphite into the pencil too much, as I have. Now you notice that this one I'm not really looking at any reference. I've kind of looked at this little bird model here, but it's really just a bird made up on the idea of a couple of spheres or spherical type shapes, and then what the lighting would do. So it's something that you could possibly sort of practice, and then you'd be able to sit and just do it at your kitchen table or something sometimes, and make up all different directions, have a look at different birds and look what they look like in different directions as well. And you'll notice as he starts to come out, I start to get a bit more texture. I also did a cat video in the last lockdown that might be relevant for this one too. Similar sort of technique for getting texture on rounded volumes. I'll just play around with the cute little markings around the eyes, the highlights on the beaks. Going to be on top of the beak there, like that. I might shade into these ones that I've just pulled out the highlights of, just to knock it back a touch and let it round around there again. And then you want to get into, in the last stages, you want to get into some dark, really, really dark. If you've got a black pencil, that could also work, or another grade of graphite. Just get a few really nice dark details, especially in the shadows. Probably good to keep going with the direction of the feathers rather than what I've just done there. Yeah, and the last little bit I suppose didn't say anything about the legs, but they're not really much of a thing. Basically a stick with 3 prongs on the end, but you sort of want to bend the toe up and then down and let it be a little bit like a peanut at the end. So it gets, anyway, like a bit blobby on the end. The other one's got to come out. Don't make them too small. I think that's the thing. Not convincing. Birds have pretty big feet, long things to balance themselves with. Skinny little toes, but then sort of a bit blobby on the end. And a little bit of a claw. Might have overdone it there. If they come towards you, it just really does look like a peanut shape like that. I'm rushing this a bit, but I think you hopefully get the idea of it. This one might be sitting on a branch or something, so I'll give it a bit of shading under the branch. A bit rough, but that'll give it a bit of texture. And yeah, there's a bit of a rough thing, but have a go with it. When I was preparing, thinking how I was going to do this lesson, I played around with a bunch of different positions, looking down on top, looking to the side, and all different things, and each time it was different, and it's just a fun thing to play around with. Yeah, and just remember that it's all just really based on, the shading part of it's really based on, one circle and another circle, and the light coming from one particular direction. And then the textures, you sort of build it up with your eraser. Don't forget to let your, still see these like bands of feathers in some kind of pattern that follows the form of the wings or the head or around the eyes and stuff like that. I hope you've enjoyed the lesson today. Let me know how you go. Be really happy to see what you've made if you have a go of this. Thanks for joining us, and see you next week.